An 80-year-old woman was stopped at airport security for refusing to open a worn wooden box. Officers laughed. Bystanders stared. No one believed her until she quietly said the name that changed everything. Chuck Norris is my grandson. Some things, at first glance, seem unimportant. Some things, at first glance, seem unimportant. An old wooden box, its corners chipped, was tied with a faded cotton string. An older woman, back slightly hunched, silver hair tied neatly, strolled through an international airport rush. She carried a single small suitcase, as if all she had left in the world. No one knew where she came from, no one cared, until she was stopped at the security checkpoint. "Mum, I'm sorry, but we can't let this through unless you open it," said a security officer, his hand reaching for the box. "No," the old woman replied, softly but firmly. "I made a promise. Only the one it belongs to can open it." The officer raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "And who exactly would that be?" She paused, then answered, "My grandson. His name is Chuck Norris." Time froze for a beat. The officer blinked, then burst out laughing. "Chuck Norris? Like the martial arts movie guy? That Chuck Norris?" She nodded. Her expression didn't change. "Oh my God," he turned to a colleague. "She's adorable. Refuses to open the box and says it's for Chuck Norris." A young man in line quietly pulled out his phone and started recording. There she was, frail and quiet, standing before a pair of smirking officers, cradling a wooden box that no one understood, but everyone felt entitled to ridicule. When airport security called in police backup, one of them asked, "Ma'am, do you have any proof that you know Chuck Norris?" She replied gently, "There's no paperwork that can prove what you've raised." They asked her everything. Why was she traveling alone? Why didn't she have a phone? Why wouldn't she let them scan the box? She said nothing more. She just held the box close to her chest, as if inside it was not an object, but a piece of her heart. And then, just as they were about to restrain her and force the box open, the sound of footsteps echoed through the checkpoint. A man appeared, middle-aged, worn but strong, sad eyes, a weathered face, and a presence that made people stop what they were doing. He scanned the room slowly. Then he said, calm and clear, "She doesn't need to open the box. I'm the one it's meant for." Every eye turned toward him. One of the officers whispered, stunned, "Oh my God, I think that's actually Chuck Norris." No one at the airport knew her name. To the officers, she was just the old lady, but her documents read Agnes Norris, a name almost forgotten except on paper, because to those who truly knew her, she was simply Grandma. She was 81 years old. Fragile frame, rounded shoulders, nearly all silver hair save for a few coarse black strands that had stubbornly remained. Deep lines marked her cheeks and the corners of her mouth, as though time had walked across her life, not in a rush, but with slow, deliberate steps. She wore a faded grey cardigan, thin and worn, over a cream-coloured mandarin-collared shirt, buttoned all the way to the neck like the elders from another time. Her shoes were soft brown canvas, soles worn unevenly from long walks. Slung at her side was a small, frayed handbag, but what she held most tightly was the wooden box. It was made of weathered pine, small enough to rest in both hands, bound with an old cotton tie, a faint engraving on the top. A wide-winged bird, perhaps, had been worn down with time, its form now uncertain. She clutched the box like it held something more precious than gold. Not an item, a heartbeat. Agnes wasn't talkative. Each of her answers had weight, not in their length, but in their clarity. Her eyes, though, said more than her words. They held a strange mix of endurance and weariness, of hope and sorrow, as if her entire lifetime had funneled into this single journey. No one knew who she used to be, but if you listened closely, you might hear her whisper to someone long gone, "I'm about to hand over what you left behind. I know you've been watching." Chuck Norris, the man the world knew as a force of nature, a legend of martial arts, a movie icon. But in this story he wasn't any of that. He was a grandson, a quiet boy once, raised by a steel-hearted woman who rode him to school on a rusty bicycle, who served him bowls of porridge in silence and wiped his tears with the hem of her sleeve after every lost match. As a child, Chuck rarely spoke. His father passed away when he was still small. His mother worked endlessly to support the family, so Chuck spent nearly the first decade of his life with his grandmother. Agnes was firm, never cruel. She didn't know how to fight, and she never taught him to punch or kick, but she taught him to keep his back straight when wrongly scolded, and to never bow his head when he hadn't done wrong. She used to say, "Sometimes you need to stand still, so others can see they're running in the wrong direction." Chuck remembered vividly the nights they'd sleep side by side. She'd open that wooden box. Inside were a few old photos, a broken wristwatch, and a letter. That letter was from his mother, written the year she found out she was terminally ill. Chuck had never read it. Grandma always said, "Not yet, when you're ready." Then time swept everything away. Agnes got sick, got better, and then started forgetting. There were days Chuck thought she no longer remembered what mattered, or what she still had to pass on. Until he got that call from the airline. "We have an elderly passenger traveling alone, claiming she has a package for you. Can you confirm?" He had been in his garage, training in silence, but when he heard the phrase, "old wooden box," something inside him clenched. "Hold her there," he said. "I'm coming." When he walked into the terminal, he wore no suit, no sunglasses, no entourage, just a faded grey jacket, worn jeans, and scuffed training shoes. He said nothing. But something about his presence made everyone pause, not because of fame, but because his silence carried weight. Greg was 34, newly transferred to the high-security baggage screening section. He had never broken protocol, but he had a dangerous habit: assumptions. To Greg, anyone without a smartphone, without a digital ID, without fluent English, deserved a second look. An old woman traveling alone with no electronics, carrying an unidentifiable wooden box, that was cause for concern. Greg wasn't cruel, but his instincts were shaped by appearances. So he didn't shout at Agnes, he didn't insult her, but his eyes were full of judgment. The way he asked, "So you're telling me your grandson is Chuck Norris? What is it, Hollywood's now recruiting grandmas?" The security area erupted with laughter. Greg had no idea that line would be his biggest regret all week. Across the floor stood Julia, 26, new to the team. She was the first not to laugh. She asked Greg to let Agnes sit. He refused. She offered the old woman a bottle of water when she saw her arms tremble. Agnes didn't take it, but her eyes softened. Julia, quietly, stayed back as others pushed to open the box. And when Chuck arrived, it was Julia who recognized him, not from fame, but from the way he looked at Agnes. Ryan, meanwhile, was just a guy on his way home. He filmed the scene for fun. An old lady, a box, an airport drama. But when he saw Agnes's eyes, when he saw her stand without defiance, but not without dignity, he stopped filming. Instead, he was the first to upload a new video after Chuck arrived. It read, "I was wrong to laugh, but let me correct the story. This wasn't some crazy old lady. She was the only one in the airport today who knew exactly what she was carrying and exactly who it was for. They moved Agnes to a private room. Cold, metallic, impersonal. Steel chairs, an aluminium table. Lisa set a plastic cup of water in front of her, but she didn't touch it. The box sat on the table, still closed, still bound in string. Greg stood with his arms crossed, watching. "Can you tell me exactly what's inside?" he asked, more serious now. Agnes stared at the box, then replied, slowly, "It's a piece of someone's heart, a goodbye, a promise kept, something that was thought to be lost forever." Greg raised his eyebrows. "You do realize if you don't disclose what's inside, we're authorized to detain it?" She nodded. Lisa stepped in, gentler. "You said your grandson is Chuck Norris, but you don't have any photo, any contact, nothing that proves it." Agnes remained quiet. Then, after a pause, she reached into the inner pocket of her sweater and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. A letter. It was old, handwritten, faded ink and fragile folds. Lisa opened it carefully. "To my dear Charles, from Grandma." Much of the ink had run, but one part at the end stood out, written later, maybe by a steadier hand. "If one day you need to find yourself again, open the box I left you. If you're finally old enough to understand, you'll know why I had to go." Lisa looked up, her eyes softened. Greg, still skeptical, said, "This could be faked. We still haven't confirmed anything." Just then, hurried steps echoed outside. The door creaked open. Julia poked her head in. "Lisa, there's a man outside. Says his name is Charles Norris. He showed a real ID. He knew her name. Called her Greg." Silence. Greg exhaled and backed away. Lisa stood up. Agnes smiled gently. "Told you," she whispered. "He'd come." It was the first smile she had shown all day. The door opened wide. He stepped in. The grey coat, the sun-worn face, the quiet eyes that had seen wars, cameras, arenas, and pain. Chuck Norris. He said nothing to the guards. He looked straight at the box. "I'm here, Grandma," he said, soft, steady. Her lips trembled. Her hands too, but not from fear. She pushed herself up, slowly. "I kept it, just like I promised." Chuck walked over, didn't look at anyone else. He placed a hand on the box. The wood was cold, but familiar. The last time he saw it, he was a kid, sitting on her lap while his mother packed boxes. That wooden box sat high on a shelf, gathering dust. "Not for now," his mother had said, "for later." He never saw it again. Until now. He untied the string, not rush and ask if every turn unlocked a memory. He opened the lid. Inside, a worn-out wristwatch, cracked face, stopped at an unknown hour. A yellowed letter, still folded. A black-and-white photo of a little boy riding on a young woman's back. His mother, smiling widely. He picked up the watch gently. "It was hers," Grandma said, voice low. "A gift from her father when she graduated. She wore it everywhere. After she passed, the hospital never gave it back. I thought it was gone." Chuck stared at the back. Faint engraving, his mother's name. A nurse held onto it, said it felt too personal to throw away. "Years later she found me in a nursing home. She remembered. Gave it back." Chuck didn't speak. He touched the photo. His voice cracked. "I remember this. A county fair. She let me ride piggyback. Wouldn't say no. He laughed once, but there was something broken in it. Then the letter. Grandma hesitated. I never read it. I thought, only you should. He opened it. The handwriting was hers. Neat, slanted, gentle. Dear Charles, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your grandma kept her promise. I'm sorry I didn't say everything while I was here. I didn't want to scare you or hurt you, or worse, make you feel alone. I know you've grown into a strong man, but strong doesn't mean unbreakable. You're allowed to hurt, to miss, to cry. And when I'm no longer there to tell you, know this, you are loved, by me, by her. This box doesn't hold answers, just memories and love. Keep it close, because it's yours. Chuck folded the letter. He looked up. His eyes were dry, but inside them, oceans. Lisa stepped forward, her voice barely audible. I'm so sorry, we didn't understand. Chuck shook his head. You followed protocol, nothing wrong with that, but sometimes rules forget the people behind them. Greg said nothing, just nodded. Chuck turned to Agnes. Thank you for carrying this all the way. Are you okay? Why didn't you call me? She chuckled. The first time all day. I wanted to bring it myself. When you opened it, I needed to be there. Chuck nodded. He took the box, held it close. The hallway outside the security room was quiet when Chuck and Agnes stepped out. Julia walked ahead of them, speaking quietly to the staff. No one questioned, no one blocked their way. People in the terminal turned and stared. A few recognized him. Phones came out, but no one laughed. Not this time. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. Mum, who is that man? She answered, That's someone who never forgot what matters. Chuck helped Agnes into a seat by the departure gate. The boarding call hadn't come yet. The buzz of the terminal faded behind them like static, just them. And the box. He looked at her hands, old, shaking, but still so strong. Do you know, he said, you're the bravest person I've ever known. Agnes chuckled, her voice thin but sure. No. I'm just someone who keeps her promises. I told your mother when the time came you'd get this, not through the mail, not through a lawyer, from my hands, with my breath still warm. Chuck nodded. The box rested in his lap, but his fingers never stopped brushing the edge, like he was afraid it might vanish. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he turned to her. Why now? He asked. Why not 10 years ago, or 5? She inhaled slowly. Because you weren't ready then. You were still chasing things. Roles, medals, headlines. You needed to get all that out of your system. I waited for the day you were quiet enough to hear your own heart beat. That day is today. Chuck said nothing. But he understood. The boarding call echoed overhead. Julia returned, handing Agnes a small cup of tea with a napkin wrapped gently around it. A handwritten note peeked from beneath the rim. Thank you for reminding us. Sometimes the most valuable things are carried by the humblest hands. Wishing you a peaceful journey. Chuck helped Agnes onto the plane. Their seats were at the very back. Quiet, away from the bustle. She leaned into him, eyes fluttering closed. Her breathing was soft. Steady. Chuck looked out the window. The sky beyond was impossibly blue. He remembered being 15, standing at his mother's grave. Everyone thought it strange that he didn't cry. But that night, alone in bed, he soaked the pillow until it could hold no more. Now, with the box beside him, with Agnes resting on his shoulder, he understood. Some wounds don't heal. They don't need to. They just want to be seen. The plane lifted off. That strange weightlessness, neither here nor there. Agnes opened her eyes slowly. "What are you thinking?" He smiled. "I was thinking, we spend so much time building the future, we forget the old things in the past. Let them rot behind us." She nodded. "That's why you have people like me. I don't build new things. I keep the old ones safe. Until someone comes back for them." Chuck took her hand. Wrinkled, fragile, and yet full of power. They sat like that, quiet. The hum of the engine is a lullaby. If you've made it this far, maybe you're holding a box too. Maybe it's a gift from your mother, a letter from a father, a photo worn soft by years. Maybe it's an apology you never gave, or an embrace you never returned. Don't wait too long. Don't let it turn to dust. Go back. Open it. And if someone hands you a box, don't ask what's inside. Ask, am I the one meant to open it? Agnes wasn't famous. The box didn't hold treasure. Chuck Norris didn't arrive like a hero. He came like a grandson, quiet, grateful, reverent. And that's why nobody forgot that day at the airport. Not because of a fight, not because of a name, but because of love, because of loyalty, because a memory passed on just in time. Sometimes what makes us most human is how we carry the memories of those we loved, and how we pass them on when the time is right.